Hello, and welcome to another Rouge unit of the week. And today we're taking a look at the Command M8. The M8 armoured car, right, nicknamed the Greyhound by the British, but it wasn't really a name used by the Americans, was an American armoured car which entered in service in 1943. Basically, the Americans were using the M6 GMC with a 37mm gun strapped to the back as a tank destroyer. They wanted something a bit better to replace it as a tank destroyer, a 6-reeled armoured car with a turret and a 37mm. By the time the Ford Motor Company submitted their design and was approved, they realised that the 37mm wasn't really adequate enough in the tank destroyer role, so it ended up getting, rechanged into a reconnaissance vehicle. Over 8,000 of these vehicles would end up being produced and receive ride service on the European and Pacific fronts. In the Pacific, it was used quite a bit in Okinawa. It was actually kind of a tank destroyer in the Pacific because the Japanese tanks didn't have much armor and the 37mm could go through them quite easily. In the Western front, it had mixed results. It was a decent reconnaissance vehicle. However, it did perform poorly off-road due to the fact it had reels. The reel base kind of made it got stuck quite easily, as well also suffered from engine issues which made it quite an unreliable vehicle. However, the end of the Second World War would not be the end of the M8 Greyhound service, as even though the Americans weren't using them anymore, they sold them off to a whole heap of people. The Koreans would end up using them, South Koreans that is. The French would end up using them in the Algerian Wars and the First Indochina Wars. The South Vietnamese Army would end up utilising them. A bunch of NATO countries such as Belgium and the classic example Norway would end up getting the M8 Greyhounds. And also a whole heap of South American and African countries actually still use the M8 Greyhound to this day. In-game, the Command M8 is a 40-point leader vehicle available exclusively to the 3rd Armoured Division. And it has 2 weapons. So you have the standard M6 37mm cannon with 40 AP and 40 HE shells. The AP shells are alright with 70mm of penetration, okay damage, 50% accuracy, 1.25km range, and a rather average rate of fire of only 7 rounds a minute. The high explosive shells are, low caliber high explosive shells. They don't do a whole lot of damage. And then you have a single 50 cal machine gun with 800 rounds of ammunition, which is quite generous. Down to miscellaneous stats, you have 25 frontal armor, a reek top armor, 10 at side, and 10 at back. You have the leader trait, and you also have a radio because you're American. You go 45 kilometers off-road, 90 kilometers on the road, medium stealth, and good optics. In battle, the Command M8 is a pretty decent leader vehicle. For 40 points, you get the leader trait. You get the radio trait, which is pretty big because, all the American leaders and recons, and pretty much everybody is bringing the radio along with them. You're on a fast chassis, which helps to some extent. It allows you, in A phase, to get to the front line faster, but this isn't exactly a unit you're going to be charging into the fray. It's a leader unit. You kind of want to keep it back a little bit, unless you're doing some crazy M8 Greyhound rush and you win a little bit of leader support to back up your Greyhounds. The cannon is crap, to be honest. It just does enough to protect itself from other lightly armoured vehicles, but it's no Soviet 45 or British 2-pounder. But you do have decent anti-infantry capabilities because you have that 50 cal with a lot of ammunition, and the HE shells, even though not being great, do add up to a little bit better anti-infantry work. Honestly, the unit by itself is really not that interesting. It's just another M8 Greyhound, but it has leader trait this time. Woohoo. What does make it interesting is that this is the only leader unit in the game, with one exception, which is available in the support tab. The only other one is the SPW-232, but that's not available to any multiplayer division. I'm fairly certain that's an Army General unit. And it being in the support tab is quite interesting because it allows you to free up other slots for leaders. For example, with the infantry tab for 3rd Armoured, you're not really going to want to take any leaders. You barely have any infantry to begin with. The tank tab is honestly pretty generous. You can definitely throw in a few leaders, yeah. Support tab, which is what this vehicle is available in, is a bit 50-50. The Command M8 is not a terrible unit to bring in terms of availability. You get 2 in A and 4 in B phase. However, there's also a lot of other very useful stuff you can get in the 3rd Armour support tab, such as 105 Shermans, machine guns, actual commanders, supply trucks, etc. I think this brings up a good question of why isn't there more leaders in the support tab? I know with mods like Redstorm, pretty much all the leaders are in the support tab to begin with. They're given support by yelling at all the dudes to take all the fire for you. But in vanilla ST2 stands with armoured cars like the M8 Greyhound, why isn't there more other armoured cars with leader traits like the 232? Why does no other multiplayer division has access to any sort of leaders in the support tab? It's a bit weird that the only one available is, yes, the Command M8. Yeah, overall this vehicle's just a little bit of a niche oddity. It's alright, it's not going to be game breaking, it's not a terrible unit, it's not a great unit, it's a cost effective unit for the price. It's just odd. And well, I'm going to leave it off at that. This has been another Wranglers Unit of the Week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And as usual, please just take it easy.